It feels like a bit of a treat.
Yeah, we had Coastline as the last map of the day in the last playday, which was Liquid versus Furia, and, well, we remember how that went. It was a little bit of a mess. So I would like to see this one be a bit less of a mess, but it feels like a free-for-all, sometimes Coastline, where it could just go either way. You never know what's going to happen. And Team 1, of course, having already played today and going to Max OT as well, narrowly missing out on the win, that's going to affect everything as well, even if it's just by making them a bit tired. Team 1 are going to be the ones to ban Jackal and Valkyrie, while MIBR go for Thatcher and Melusi.
Some funny old bans coming out there, but then again, we are on Coastline. Melusi sees such a high pick rate, it makes sense to ban her out. Jackal, for me, maybe is a bit of the question mark. It's possible to use Jackal on this map, but I always don't think it's meta. I always believe that there are other things you can bring as opposed to a Jackal, especially for such a small map. MIBR to start things off here on the defense. Coastline, a map that has no significant way either side as to which one is more sort of potent, which one is preferred. Attackers and defenders see a fairly equal split, and if anything, there's an edge toward the attackers, just in the fact that you can be a bit more flexible in what you bring. However, for this round in particular, Lagonis is still going to bring the Hibana. Usually a regular pickup on Coastline. You can open some things, and some hard walls are nice to get open, but hard breach not always a necessity.
Well, I was actually going to say, when is the last time you saw Hibana be brought on Coastline? Because oftentimes nowadays, if you're going to bring a hard breach, it's usually 8s. You know, on this site particularly, the reason why you want to bring a hard breach predominantly is to open up the pink wall, which is that quadruple wall that borders courtyard in the center. You can do that from the roof, and Hibana you can do from far away, but you can do the same with Ace, and he brings smokes. The only other place I can think of that would be particularly useful to bring a hard breach is the VIP wall, which is just, well, the wall of VIP onto VIP corridor. But if you can get that open, then you can have a really strong line of sight through into billiards and pink. So that's another place where you might like to see that be used. But again, that's somewhere that you can get an ace, and he brings smokes. So really interesting to see Lagonis pick Hibana. Reduct taken straight out. Great kill from Neskin, who remained resilient in that engagement.
Have Team 1 chosen violence after that first game of the night? They might be coming into this with quite a big point to prove, and if they've been in that game mentality, that playday mentality, and then gone off and hit themselves with a scrim and some practice and some sort of teamwork and exercises, we could see quite a dangerous Team 1 coming out here now, because these guys are already hot. We saw standout performances from Alamau, KDS, Levy was a little bit more questionable, but Lagonis stepped up. Neskin as well to a degree. There was some really good individual plays from all of them, and it was such a hard fought game that you would expect, you know, every single individual to have something positive to say, and we genuinely do. So if they've sort of been able to carry that over and manage their energy throughout the course of the day, it could be quite dangerous here. They moved with such conviction onto that opening kill, and it may have just been opportunistic, and they're instead going to start to drag things back somewhat. But for me, it looked like a promising start, and then everything's just sort of tempered off a little bit.
The one to really look out for, I think, will be Levy, because he's someone who got caught out in the tail end of a lot of opening engagements in the game earlier today. And so that meant he often found himself as the opening death. He's not that this time, but we want to see him doing a bit better. Felipox turning around onto KDS as he misses the shot, and that's Lagonis' cue to get planting.
Ooh, it looks as though that plant will go down. The Toxic Babe came in far too late there. Felipox now trying to do something and try and aggressively push on out, but he will only find himself an already downed Alamau. The site is now being held from Repel as Levy has got himself onto that aquarium balcony. More Toxic Babe canisters coming on in. Surrogate only going to do so much, and you need to do something about the player on Repel. Raps could find himself with a pocket of safety here, especially if Lukic continues to cover him, but he's got to get back onto that defuse. Levy left with no choice but to aggressively push on through. Time being wasted here. Fouls might be down, Raps might be down, but I tell you who isn't down. Player defusing that bomb.
Absolutely nuts there that Team 1 actually had fairly decent positioning for dealing with the post plant, especially the control over Aqua Balcony, where you basically have a direct line of sight over where the disabler has to be, and yet MIBR still came out on top in that instance. Lukic, the name that we called out, he's in the top 5 for rating, KD, KPR, and survival in Brazil. So despite the fact that he actually had some time off because he was unwell, they had to bring in a free agent to stand in for him. Lucas he's doing absolutely great, and he's proving that that's continuing through into this game after that round as well. MIBR really taking a situation that could have worked very much against them and deciding to turn that into a win.
Good dedication to just concentrate on playing the objective from MIBR. You know, recognizing, yeah, sure, we can just waste this time and we can have someone disable that diffuser and just essentially get the kills and then burn the time onto poor old Levy, who was just left with so much to do, and there is only so much you can do when you are on that Repel. There's only so many angles that you have access to, and sure, it might be really easy to stay alive there, but you still can't have full effect, especially when you're in such a deficit in terms of the man count. So Team 1 maybe going to feel a little bit hard done to there. It's not every day we see a plank go down and then it get sort of retaken, the bomb site get retaken, so something to work on there in terms of getting kills before you get that plant down. But once again, they were coming low on time, so what are they going to be able to do differently here? Well, for a start, they're going to be attacking somewhere else. I believe they're going to be attacking over onto Kitchen. Redux is playing at the bottom of Cool Vibes, and so much intel getting pinged out on these drones by Team 1.
It's nice that they're being methodical. You can also see an ankle through that drone hole of the last drone that we had an angle onto. Reduct has taken at least one of the drones for himself. He has that present upstairs, so he can kind of flank watch for himself. Alamo gets the first kill onto him, though. So while the drone will outlive the Mozzie can't do much on their own. A second kill for Alamo as well means a good start for Team 1. And those remaining roamers, in this case just Lukic really, will probably have to start moving back towards the site soon.
They are going to be feeling the pinch, especially now that full control has been gained over Sunrise. Puts question to how long Felipox is going to be able to stay alive inside of Blue as well, as he's now going to maybe try and challenge onto Alamau. He knows full well that he's going to be inside of Sunrise, and actually you can see him dipping out in towards Sauna. Alamau is looking dangerous. He's found himself 3, and there's nothing to stop him from confirming this and getting an entire ace here. Fowl's going for a run out. What is he doing in such a deficit? Going for that kind of an aggressive play on the smoke. It's still fairly doable for MIBR, but they've got a big battle and they need to find an opening. There's a minute left on the round. Drones are being lost here, and it looks as though Alamau is going to do it. He finds his 4th. Fowls is now the last player alive for MIBR. He's inside of main lobby. And I'm sure that Alamau is going to be thirsting after this one. He pushes himself down the corridor. Alamau finds it. A flawless round and an ace there for Team 1.
It feels almost like the calmest ace we've ever seen, because it was spread so much across the round. It wasn't all in one burst. It wasn't in a complete explosion of action. It was just control. Team 1 had so much of it, and Alamau could punish the control that Team 1 lacked. Or MIBR lacked. Sorry, my bad. MIBR lacked the control. It was a strange ace, wasn't it? Because everybody knew where Alamau was. And it's almost like no one on the side
of MIBR ever really called it out that he was in Sunrise, because everybody died through just peeking him in one way or another. And for Fowls to be in main lobby in a 1 versus 5 with less than a minute left, with his back turned to the car, it just seems strange.
It was really odd, wasn't it? Because it was like, at that point, you know, there is the risk of someone coming down white stairs. There's the risk of someone dropping down the hatch behind you. There's a risk of someone coming down the kitchen corridor. There's the risk, I guess, that someone could come in through service and literally be in the site behind you. It is a very exposed place to play where you can be completely surrounded and have very limited information as to where those players are. I'm not entirely sure why you'd want to put yourself there, because even if a player were to come down white stairs, eventually they're going to move in towards the site and you will see them at some point. So you might as well take the opportunity to position yourself somewhere that's going to be more opportune for you. Falls really had some questionable moments in that round, and yeah, there was the jump out as well, which was just a bit strange, and I'm not sure, but either way, the rounds are evened up now. So there's that.
We'll have to see how MIBR bounce back from that and just chalk it down to a bad round for now. See if that's a trend that continues, as there was just some great deal of confusion there. Man of the moment, Alamal, looking to make his entrance here through Guitar and Hall of Fame and make clear everything upstairs, attacking downstairs onto a blue bar and Sunrise. Oh, sorry, onto a kitchen service again. My apologies. Sunrise is being held this time, but that isn't the point of ingress this time for Team 1. Instead, they're going to be trying to take this top floor. Ooh, Neskin. Nearly. He's got the ping, he's got the info, pull the trigger, can't hit his shots. Not sure if there is in fact a gap for him to go through, as we can see obviously the outline. Obviously Neskin can't, but he still knows that there is going to be a player behind that. However, it is a Goyo shield, so you do have to deal with it with some degree of care. Backside push now coming in from KDS as the wall will get open, but KDS, no, doesn't check his corner, had no intel, and the push wasn't succinct. It didn't come through at the same time from the opposite side, and that's meaning that a kill is going to go untraded.
That was absolutely bizarre. They knew Raps was in there. Neskin's just been trying to deal with him for 15 years. So I don't quite know why he went in looking in the wrong direction, but I mean, free kill, I guess, onto him. And Raps gets a second one onto Neskin. I do have to question why Neskin didn't decide to expend his nades to clear out the shield earlier than, you know, he did. Like, the shield was left up for a while, but regardless, Alaman's going to push on forward and finally gets Raps, but really shouldn't have had to do it at the cost that he did.
And look at the time left, 17 seconds. We're seeing players continually get down, one on either side. Lagonis is going to have to aggressively push in, but he's likely going to push into gunfire, and sure enough, he does. Alamar finds one onto Filipos, but I believe he was already down for the count. 5 seconds, an attempted drop shot, but it will be cut short. Redux and Fowls finding the final 2 for MIBR. It looked much better from MIBR, and much worse from Team 1.
Really bizarre from Team 1. I mean, you know, they decide to change the approach of their attack. So they're no longer doing a Sunrise-focused attack, but instead coming in through Master or Penthouse and Theater. That's fine. Those are the 2 most common ways of attacking onto the kitchen site anyway. And I actually quite liked at the start the fact they decided to go for something different, because it kind of shakes up the defenders' expectations. Now, they would have already droned it out as well and known that there was a defense being held up there. That's why they actually had the Hibana pellets, the X-Kairos, used on the penthouse wall so that they could open up that line of sight and try and flush Raps out. They were obviously aware of the Vulcan shield because they could, you know, see it. My assumption as to why a nade wasn't used on it earlier is probably because there was an ADS that I didn't see or something like that, because if there were not an ADS, then there wasn't really any real reason why a nade couldn't have been thrown in. But it's the fact that they had all this information, were very much aware of their reasons for pushing in that way, and still KDS walked in looking the wrong direction when he had free reign to the back of Raps' head, and then Raps could turn around and kill Neskin, who has just been trying to hold on to him and flush him out for the last however long. Very, very strange from Team 1, and really MIBR should be thanking whatever gods gave them that opportunity for it, because, I mean, that was it, man. Like, they just needed to get that control.
So maybe we chalk each team down to just having a shaky round and see that from here on out, they're both going to at least sort of play in ways that we've seen them play before, because there just looks to be so much sort of lack of surety on either side at the moment. They're both playing very scared, both playing quite timidly. I know that this game has quite a bit of weight on it for MIBR, at least, in maintaining their position in the standings. Of course, with fixtures going on before it, there is quite a bit of change inside of those standings at the moment. And MIBR haven't had the greatest of seasons so far, so they're going to want to come away from tonight with a win here. That also adds a little bit of pressure into the mix. Alamau, he's going to be pressuring over onto Redux. Can Raps find the trade? Playing hide and seek here on this main lobby desk, trying for the bait and the switch. The time has arguably passed, and Alamau's got himself into a nice position. Can pre-fire his way through, but Raps comes in with a down. Bit of a waste of a C4, but it confirms a kill nonetheless. We ought to tell Felipox that Zafir can no longer withstand.
You can see that Alamau was actually having that information pinged out for him as well. So MIBR, to be able to punish that, a really good thing, even if it does mean that they use pause. Lukit will be punished in return. Neskin getting the headshot down in through the floor. Puts MIBR at a man disadvantage. Raps is just playing very tentatively here in security, trying to hold that angle through the door, but instead backs off and places some barbed wire along the way as well. Bear in mind too that it did have an Aruni gate on as well. So MIBR really trying to hold off Team 1 from using that route in through security and office as a push into the bars.
Worry for how much intel Team 1 have currently got, as they've only got 3 drones left alive. Now as the push comes in, it seems as though MIBR can turn their attentions to the right directions, as Felipox is going to look to try and confirm that kill. No, does get taken out as Raps is left in the impossible situation, and apparently Team 1 did have all the information that they needed. At least Neskin did. He finds the final 2 kills. We get a nice view of it there in the kill cam.
I am getting a little bit of a flashback from our first game of the day, just because it's the backwards and forwards so far. And we've seen this in Brazil a few times when teams get caught in this pattern of one round goes one way, one round goes the other. It can really go on for a while. And I mean, if you really want to dig deep into that, then we could go all the way back to SI 2019 for something very similar that happened on this exact map, but between any Brazilian team. So maybe that's a little bit different. But regardless, MIBR Team 1 constantly flip-flopping. And I don't think it's because either of them are coming through with completely infallible approaches to the attack/defense, respectively. I think there are a lot of mistakes being made on either side that are going punished when those openings happen. You know, there have been players who have done well on certain rounds and then shown up on others. You know, Raps Falls had a good round despite the fact having a really questionable play early on in the game. Alamau has been showing up for Team 1 and actually sitting there with a really good kill differential at 8-3, then was taken down and punished quite hard by MIBR in that last round. So there is this kind of balance that's happening right now on this map, and neither of these teams have yet figured out how to break away from that and charge forward with some momentum.
We might just be destined to see another overtime here, Gio. And that just could be the way of the road. We may be, that may be the path that has been laid out before us. But these two teams are certainly battling it out. It's kind of one of those games where it's more through sort of teaming in one thing or another than two teams that are really going at it. I think we're just seeing inconsistencies over the course of different rounds, really. This round in particular, attacking onto Blue Bar and Sunrise, it wasn't somewhere it wasn't somewhere that Team 1 looked like they were in a good position to try and win. They didn't seem likely to win that round, in my opinion. They didn't have a lot of drones, they had sort of bad positioning, and it took Neskin to get 2 big kills to really open up things. And MIBR maybe falling into that sort of fatal trap of over-peaking a little bit. But they've certainly felt like it was reasonable enough for them to come back here again and to give it another shot. And that's probably quite a fair assessment, especially with how the early round went.
Opening kill. Lukid on to Neskin. Starting things off well for MIBR. One thing that I do want to say is that given how even this game has been so far, I would argue that suggests slightly worse play by MIBR, purely because Team 1 have more of an excuse to be underperforming in this game because they've already played a game today, and not just a game, but a max OT game. So they have a bit more of a valid reason for potentially being somewhat worn out, for potentially not playing at their highest potential. MIBR don't really have that, and they're coming in from the top 4. You would assume that they would be playing a lot more definitively ahead than Team 1 at this point, and yet they haven't been.
Everyone's kind of shy to make the move here as Lagonis pushes through Sauna. A swing from KDS finds him a kill onto Reduct, and that could be the opening that is required. But a Toxic Babe canister is going to stop the push for the meantime. Plenty of guns on the side of MIBR pointed in the right direction. Another Toxic Babe, and with the health that's available on side of Lagonis, he is not able to push on through that. A third and final toxic canister will get thrown on out, and some aggression required here from Team 1. KDS going to try and apply that aggression, but Fowl's challenging nicely on the window. Shotgun at close range always wins KDS, I'm afraid, as kills continue to trade. Alamau attempting to go massive. It's all going to be down to Raps in this instant. Finds himself in the 1v1. Levy, he's redeeming himself for his performances earlier on tonight, and he finds the final 2.
Yeah, I really like that from Levy at the end, because I was going to say that the story of this round was really told by the kill feed, where it just said Lukid Alamau, you know, the backwards and forwards between those two players who were showing up. Then Levy comes in with the 2 kills at the end, and it's like, hey guys, I'm here, just forget about that game I played earlier, it's no big deal. And it's really nice to see as well, and it's certainly not, you know, I don't want to word it in that way, in a way that makes it sound like, you know, Levy is an underperforming player, or anything like that, really. It's more just that, I mean, after all, when I mentioned earlier, if you weren't here for the game that we had against Furia, Team 1 have 3 players in the top 10 for entry, one of whom is Levy. So this is in all of Brazil. So Levy is absolutely not an underperforming player in the grand scheme of things. It is just that in the game that we saw play earlier back on game number 1 today, Levy was really getting caught out in engagements that weren't favorable to him and found himself going down quite early in a lot of the rounds. So to see him, yeah, kind of redeem himself and rise up from those ashes to perform better in this game is really nice to see. And it's definitely proof that this isn't, you know, that kind of performance isn't something that we would consistently expect from him. It just happened to be in that game, and now he's looking a bit more on form again.
And typically you can't get a lot of entry kills without having a handful of entry deaths as well. So maybe just finding a little bit of balance there from earlier. But certainly being alive when it mattered there in round number 5. Team 1 doing a really good job of their attacking phase so far here on Coastline. You are kind of expected to come off at least an even split, and that seems to be where they are shaping up for at the moment. Potentially better as well, as there is still an opportunity for them to go 4-2 here and really start to put some pressure onto MIBR, for which the kills haven't been coming oh so easily. Seems as though they've really been struggling, certainly in that opening engagement, and then just being alive and being in the right position at the right time toward the end of the round. Somewhere that Team One are certainly excelling at the moment. And it's really starting to show. Oh, KDS, don't do it to him. Do not do it to him. He's got the bullet hole in the barricade. Oh, poor old Felipox. He gets away,
he's gone.
Oh, it was tense stuff for a time.
I was wondering if that was going to work. Whenever I see those tiny little bullet holes, because you have to remember a lot of these players, of course, don't play on 16:9. They're playing on something like 4:3, 3:2, 16:10. Basically an aspect ratio that means you have a much closer up view of what is happening. So those bullet holes are a lot easier for the players to see. Now, we've seen the X-Kairos go out onto the pink wall, but whether or not it's enough to have actually opened anything, because I think at least one of the pellets got removed. Either way, Team One are investing a ton of utility in, and they'll be held back for a time because of the Toxic Babe canister. In comes the Sophia Lifeline, and Lagonis once again for the plant.
Eating one of those Toxic Babe canisters, burning this utility nice and early. Also got rid of a C4 there as well. Diffuser going to get juggled there as KDS doesn't have a lot of health. Certainly not enough to try and plant again. And instead, Neskin will pick that up. Instead, he will eat a load of gas and keep his teammate KDS alive for the meantime. Neskin finds a great rotation kill there over onto Felipox. So not only baiting this utility and trying to get the plant down, but also coming up with really important frags. Lagonis now going to retake that diffuser and try to stick it down in the default spot. Going to get swung eventually, but Alamau comes in with the covering fire, but it wasn't quite enough. The plant has still gone down in Team One's favor. 4 versus 2 now. Make that 3 versus 2 as Raps finds a nice kill. Alamau in a little bit of an off location, as he is in fact at the bottom of Big Window, and Redux left with a large task on his hands. Could get taken out here on the rotation. He will at least get shot at, but the trade comes through as Levy gets the intel. And the 2 final players for Team One pinching to perfection to pick up that final frag.
Really well coordinated by Levy and Alamau at the end there to bring Redux down. I actually really like the approach that Team One did use onto that. When we spoke about, bringing the Hibana and being able to open up and breach onto the pink wall, rather than seeing the entire wall get opened or a use of a lot of the pellets from the roof, what we instead saw was Lagonis actually do it from luggage and use just the 2x2 pellets. So where you use 4 of them. After the changes to Hibana, you can now, of course, kind of decide how many pellets you want to use and thus how big the breach that you make is. And what they used that for was throwing in projectiles. I'm pretty sure the nades that they threw in were through those holes that Lagonis opened. You can do that from luggage. Now, he opened 2 holes, and one of my interests, and I don't know for sure because obviously I haven't played using those lines of sight, but I wonder how useful they would have been as lines of sight from luggage for players further back. Now, the reason I ask that is because one of those flank kills that were caught out by the attacking team was over at the top of White Stairs. And I thought that was really important and impactful because had that defender been able to push up into luggage, maybe they would have been able to use those Hibana holes for themselves. I don't actually remember who it was who got killed, but if they were maybe carrying something like a C4 or whatnot, that could also be used against the attackers by the defenders. So it's really nice that that kill was caught out as well. It meant that the attackers retained control over the breach that they had made, which they had specifically made to throw in utility. And that's something that we haven't seen much of in the past, mostly because the Hibana changes are very recent.
We didn't criticize earlier, but we questioned, I think is maybe a more polite way of saying it, the teamwork on the side of Team One, and we have done previously in previous weeks. The way that they executed on that round, to just go back and watch it as a round of Siege, if you didn't know anything about the team, you would suggest that they have been together for some time and that they are quite versed with playing well with each other. The way that they were juggling the diffuser, baiting out the utility, all working and pulling in the same direction, it was a beautiful round of Siege to watch, and it's now given them a huge advantage. They're 4-2 here on Coastline. They've switched now over onto the defender side, and all they've got to do is come out with an equal 3-3 split, and they will take this map.
Yeah, what I spoke about was, you know, the backwards and forwards and one of the teams needing to get that pull away that they could build from. Well, it turned out that Team 1 was that team. A beautiful nade from Raps, however, deletes Alamau off of Cool Vibes. That's really nice control. Another kill onto Lagonis in return for the death of Reduct. Means that MIBR are starting this one off strong.
Ooh, Levy responds, though, going for a bit of a stroll on Maestro. Manages to find himself one. Oh, for Leapox. That one's going to hurt if you're Neskin. I've just got a feeling that you're going to be hurting and smarting after receiving that sort of a headshot. Levy getting himself back up these Cool Vibe stairs now. He does, of course, still have the Alder, but he also doesn't have a great deal of health. Will be downed in part due to the gunfire and a little bit due to the nade, I think, as well. KDS going to bait him out now, or at least try his best. But no, gets taken down by Felipox. There's an aggressive push from MIBR straight through Hookah Door.
You know, I have to question Team 1's lack of investment into protecting Alamau on the blue stairs. I don't know where utility like ADSs were placed, but if a nade can just be thrown straight through to take him down, that's not good. Because Cool Vibes is usually one of those areas, the control of which is fought for until right to the bitter end. Especially if you're planting in Hookah. Using that rotate through into Cool Vibes is vitally important for not only rotating into the site, but also getting line of sight. And you often see that really fought over and really scrapped and scrambled very, very late into the round because of how important the control there is. So to have not invested much in retaining that control for the defenders and losing that position early is really disappointing. Because obviously they're not just going to leave Cool Vibes vacant. They're going to move someone in to take that position because it's so important. But that then immediately means that the position that that defender who's done the moving was in before is then vacant again. So you have to give up position, you have to give up space in order to fill in that gap that's left over on Cool Vibes. So I think that was a mistake from Team 1. Luckily a simple mistake, which they, you know, can probably fix in the future. But it definitely was the first domino in everything that happened in that round to allow MIBR to push straight through Hookah, get the last couple of kills they needed, and win it out.
Team 1 going to be defending here on Kitchen. Lagonis might be struggling to see that drone as it dances about his feet. Very conscious of some sort of run out. Does this speak to a bit of a rush? It looks like we could be framing up for it as plenty of utility is at least getting burned. And yes, sure enough, it will be a rush. Sledging all the way through into the bathroom. Alamau, you've got to make a swing. No, he doesn't even know that there's players in there. There's such a mess. Kills are traded and MIBR are falling. Team 1 firmly in an advantageous position here. Reduct trying to have something to say about it. Love that little bit of a drone bait that he gave. KDS down for the count, so by all means level at the moment. But for how long? Intel is going to be available on the players inside of main lobby, and that's going to net Reduct 2 kills, but not before he gets traded as well. A rapid fire round with kills going backwards and forwards. Neskin getting a few shots there in onto Felipox, but Felipox has the diffuser. He also has smoke grenades. Could try and get a plant off here. How much intel has Neskin got? He's got to push quickly because that plant is nearly confirmed. Doubts himself for a time, and the plant will go down. Felipox now in quite a good position to try and hold on to this. And Neskin really searching to check that if there are any drones onto his location, as he knows as soon as he swings this door, he's going to get pre-fired. What about that for a shot from Neskin? Turn around, dude. The diffuser's right there behind you. You have got loads of time to disable that diffuser. What a shot by Neskin.
Wow, that was an insane headshot and exactly the one he was looking for. You can see how thorough he was trying to be as well when encroaching on the plant because of looking for those drones, because of wanting to be sure that he has the advantage, even though he didn't even know where the damn diffuser was being planted. I think we've got a replay for that as well because, oh my god, that was beautiful. Real perfect shot. And I mean, crazy how the entire round just devolves down to that. They go for the rush, MIBR. It doesn't entirely work. It was actually the Gonis who got a number of kills in that instance. And as soon as we saw this, Reduct coming round to rotate to that main doorway while Levy and KDS were trying to get out of the way of service and bathroom so that they could safely res one another, or one of them needed resing. Reduct comes round, catches them both out, and then suddenly you're in this 1 versus 1. Neskin with limited information, but MIBR had even less on him. Facilitates such a wonderful kill at the end, and this is exactly what we love to see.
I think I would have been forgiven if I'd have called him Nesk in that circumstance. In the heat of the moment, with the way that he was firing, maybe not quite, but almost. Certainly up there in and amongst the top plays of the night that we've seen so far. And we have seen so many good plays here tonight. And it's by no means over. Team 1 are 1 round away from match point, 2 rounds away from closing out the game. MIBR need to show us something pretty soon here, because that little rush, for all it came down to a 1 versus 1, it didn't work for them. And it was a round that they not carelessly threw away, but sort of gave away very lightly, in my opinion.
Rush is always a big risk. You're taking a huge gamble because you know that they can fail, and that's why you often see operator lineups specifically decided that really let go and forego a lot of the utility and needs that you have for most standard operator lineups, and you lean into that rush strategy lineup. Either way, they can still fail, and that's what happened to MIBR on that last round. It looks like this time round they'll be going for something a bit more standard, as I don't see much rush to rush this time. Philippox just trying to shoot in through to Hookah. Now, Team 1, look at this. They have brought the Wamai and the Jaeger, so there should be so much more protection to Cool Vibes, which was the big problem that I had before. And indeed, you can see the Wamai magnets just by the rotate. I'm not entirely sure where the ADSs are, but we at least saw those magnets just by the shield there, above the rotate at the top of Cool Vibes. So they at least have that. That's a really big change that I wanted to see.
How is default camera still up? Like, Levy is literally on default camera, able to provide intel that there are 2 players on Hookah balcony. This is page 1 stuff from MIBR. The fact that the Ruins default camera is still up. If someone swings out onto there, or if someone tries to challenge, like, they have got no means to complain. That is a really big error here for these attackers, and they're certainly not making things easy for themselves. Reduct pushes aggressively on through 90. Will find himself a kill. KDS trades out onto Lukid. Lukid's someone that's been relatively quiet in this fixture so far. Reduct's going to retreat with only 10 or 15 health remaining. With limited time left, MIBR is still trying to find some sort of a push. Lagonis unfortunately hits the vault after missing all his shots. Val's going to take him out as a little bit of a freebie. We've still got to deal with Levy. Ooh, hold on to the door for a little bit longer. He's getting peeked by multiple angles. There's nothing that he can do. Where is Alamau? Where is KDS? Just gets overwhelmed on side of Vase. Oh, the vault through from Alamau. Vault through from KDS. Such a sad, sad end to what could have been a great round for Team 1. But MIBR dig deep, and a storm of Cool Vibes and of Hookah nets them the round.
I mean, I just had flashbacks, you know, like horror movies where you've got, like, the bad guys or the scary things or whatever. I mean, like, pick a generic horror movie thing, just encroaching from all angles. That's what that was at the end there. And I'm gonna be honest with you, that round really is almost shameful for Team 1. The reason being that there were mistakes, egregious mistakes that MIBR made that Team 1 should have punished. And I really notably talking about the default cams, right? The attackers have left those up. Use them. You can't let the attackers win on a round where they kept the default cams up. It's one thing to be the team that forgot to shoot out the default cams. It's another to be the team that let the team that forgot to shoot out the default cams win.
It's the false sense of security stuff, Gio. It's like, Levy jumps on the camera, he's like, guys, don't worry, these guys have left Ruin's default up, like, we're going to be fine in this round. And everyone's like, oh, imagine leaving that default camera up. Yeah, like, I would never do that. And then you lose the round to him because you just, like, drastically underestimated them. And all the while, it was just a bait from MIBR, and they were like, we'll leave Ruin's default cam up this time, and we'll try and lull them into a false sense of security, and then we'll just pull off a nice little pinch at the end. What do you reckon? And that's exactly what we saw happen. Such a tough round to watch from sort of Team 1's perspective because they were just getting overwhelmed in every instance. That was probably the best we've seen MIBR work together as a team, certainly in a good deal of time, because one of the first rounds that they've picked up here on the attack. Now can they do it again? They've won upstairs inside of Hooker. It's not been enough for for Team 1 to try and move back. They've instead decided to switch things up and take us to Sunrise and Blue as a bit of a change of scenery here.
My favorite type of change of scenery, one in which you can see 2 bars. It's the best.
The blue one and the Sunrise one. There's one for every time of the day.
My favorite colors. Team 1 really need to pull this one out because they absolutely should not have lost that last round. And hopefully their diligence is going to be on all-time high this time round. They brought a Clash. Very interested to see how that is going to go. We've seen a lot of Clash play today from a couple of teams, most notably W7M when they were playing against FaZe Clan in that last game that we had. Clash is really good at denying massive areas to the attackers. And unless MIBR can effectively deal with her, then they could find their route into the site much harder. You can hear those Selmas, I think, being popped off somewhere. It's not going to be here in Mud, where they sometimes are placed, so I assume they're on the other side of the site. And Clash is going to get aggressive on that doorway.
oNe playing quite aggressively, as you say there. Easy to get himself caught out, especially when you've got nothing really around you. Levy! How have you just won that engagement? How have you just taken off Lukid's head? We can't even blame the Observer because Lukid should win that engagement all the time, but Levy just comes out swinging like a madman. Felipox is going to find one onto Neskin and level things out, but Alamau steps up to the plate once again. Felipox inside of this office area, the site open, but Toxic Babes denying access for now. Files watching the flank through security. And all the while we wait. 40 seconds on the clock. Wraps with an important swing there over onto Alamau. It really opens up Sunrise, but the diffuser isn't in Sunrise. The diffuser is now being rotated through, but gets caught out by the Clash. Kill straight either way. KDS for Wraps. As frag grenades are now tossed out onto that Clash to try and drop that shield somewhat. Levy playing pro. Nobody knows where Levy is at this moment in time, and oNe is just burning time. Gets some pre-fire shots in over onto Fouls. Goes for a bit of a change of pace. If he can work with the Clash here, he could find multiple frags. Levy finds one. Can he grab the second, or is time going to step in? Draws for the pistol. Confirms the kill. It is going to be oNe that grabs it from the Clash. The time was winning anyway. Both players could have got the kill. It was locked in there.
A bit scrappy, that's for sure, and we're looking very similar to how we did in the first half, where the first 4 rounds of each half have gone MIBR Team 1, MIBR Team 1, or as they're written in my notes, Momo on each one. That was kind of a... It was a bit messy, but I could understand the thought process from Team 1. They really invested the Clash up in Sunrise, pushing towards Mud, or Pool, or Sauna, whatever you would like to call it. But the breach was actually made over onto the blue wall over from within office, which suggested that that's where MIBR wanted to push through. And there was way less attention being paid there from Team 1. So what they did is they actually recalled the Clash and they brought her out into the kitchen corridor, which kind of meant that if any player, an attacker, were to move in onto the site from either side of the site and onto whichever bomb site they wanted, you still had eyes on that using the Clash. There was also a shield there as well, which provided some protection behind her too. And what that basically gave Team 1 was the space to be able to decide what they were going to do based on what was happening and the decisions that MIBR were making in real time. Now, KDS was also trying to play next to the Clash, not only to provide cover, but obviously also to use the Clash to get kills. He did get one kill, but was immediately traded out. And I think that's what sent things into a bit of turmoil, because suddenly you're waiting for players on either side, and you can't be as coordinated and decisive in anything that you're doing because you're at such, such a lack of players. So it was really an interesting one. I could understand how Team One were trying to make those mid-round adaptations, and ultimately they did pull it out. That puts them on match point, so if they win this kitchen defense, then they'll be taking a regulation win against MIBR, and they truly will be the #1 Team One.
MIBR maybe have something to say about that. Lucan certainly does, as he takes down Alamau. Often referred to as one of the star players on the side of Team One. Being able to get rid of the mute here could be a huge early swing here for these attackers. Pressure going to be mounting elsewhere as Fowls gets himself up onto the roof, but for all intents and purposes isn't going to be doing anything active so far aside from droning in his teammates, of which there are a lot of drones that are moving. There are only 4 drones left on the server, 3 as they continue to tick down. Now, we're not even at the halfway point. That's a boatload of information that has been by this MIBR side so far, but they've also got quite a lot of access on into site.
So far, Alamau's the only one who is missing from either of these teams. This time, MIBR haven't gone for the rush, which is kind of clear. Instead, Philippox trying to move on forward, but he gets caught out by a goo mine and the toxic bait
How is
canister.
he still there?
He's still alive, but he's got to go for the plant. But look, these players from Team 1 trying to move on round. They get taken down by Falls, however. That's excellent cover from MIBR. Lagonis is just on a tiny sliver of health, and it does not last long. Philippox has another opportunity to go in for the plant, and it's pretty much all just Levy alone.
What can Levy do here? He's playing for 1 kill currently. He's playing for the kill on Blue Bar. He's going to find that kill over onto Blue Bar. Can he grab more? His teammate is down. Lagonis, unlikely to be revived, but it is a possibility. MIBR really not giving anything away here, as this is obviously for the round. Lagonis instead choosing to gain information. No, coming back to be revived. Not enough time now. Going to have to go for the swing. Philippox finds the final kill onto Levy. Fowls gets his just reward for the down earlier. And MIBR hang in here for 1 more round.
One step closer to overtime. Honestly, Philippox got incredibly lucky in that round. The fact that he wasn't punished when he pushed into service. You know, the smokes that you throw out as an ace only last for so long. And as soon as he was massively held back by the goo mine and the toxic babe canister, I was wondering if those smokes were going to last long enough to keep him covered. But you know what did keep him covered? Falls. Jumping down and getting the kills required on those 2 members of Team 1 who were trying to rotate round to catch Philippox out from the other angle. Great kills. And without them, MIBR would have almost undoubtedly lost that round. But instead, they didn't. And suddenly, they had really good positioning, another lease of life, an opportunity to try and make the plant, which they successfully did. And Team 1 were basically left with just 1 guy remaining. Difficult position for Team 1, and really frustrating for them, I would imagine, that they couldn't win that one out, despite how much it looked like it was written on the walls that they could have won it earlier on in that round. It means that MIBR only need to take this next attack to send things into overtime, which is their only way to win at this point, but a Team 1 going to allow it.
Team 1 didn't look great last time, if I recall, on this site. We saw them get somewhat overwhelmed by MIBR. There was a really concise push of Hooker Door and Cool Vibes Stairs. I think it was the round where the Ruins camera was left up as a default cam by MIBR. And we had kind of had a bit of a joke about that. But it didn't look fantastic from the side of Team 1. Early intel gathered there for fouls. Likely not to come to much, but at least he knows that KDS is going to be playing inside of that theatre room. Plenty of vertical being held as well. You get the impression that Team 1 just want to try and finish it out here and now, because if this goes to OT, it seriously could go in either direction, and you've got to ask at that point, you know, which team can dig deeper, which team gets attack or defense first, and things start to become a little bit more unsure. KDS still being pressured. It's almost certainly going to get pushed sooner rather than later from that penthouse side.
Remember,
Ooh, there he is. He does get pushed.
I was going to say, remember, it was KDS who walked into Penthouse early, or into Theatre on one of the earlier rounds and looked the wrong way. So maybe that's just his forever tomb. Levy does get a kill back onto Raps, however, evening out the man count as we head into the final half of the round. Alamount adding things. Oh, make that two, in fact, with the SMG-11. This is a player who's been showing up for Team 1, and this could be his time to shine. Only 2 players left of MIBR, that's Felipox and Lukid, and they've got all of this to go up against themselves.
Alamau has shifted the tide in a huge way there. Felipox is going to be able to get Sofa's wall open, but what are they really going to be able to do with it now? We've got Lukid at the bottom of Cool Vibe Stairs. These last 2 attackers are very split up indeed. Felipox going to gather some last second information, but lines of sight are now being held. And the chance for plant going down is very slim indeed, although Iliads is fairly light of players. Lukid now going to make a rotation to join his teammate, or at least provide pressure from the same side, maybe getting himself onto 90. Waiting for the Toxic Babe canisters to dissipate. Of course, it is going to continue to burn the clock. Alamau looking at the long angle. He's got both 90 and the plant spot, or default plant spot, covered, should I say. He will find himself downed, however. It could be a big swing here, although he has used all of his Toxic Babe canisters. There's going to be information on Felipox pushing in, as there is going to be a Maestro Evil Eye. Smoke going to try and cover this plant, but time is getting slim. Felipox going for a non-default plant spot as Lukid tries to push on in. Neskin has the intel. He finds the kill. Levy the second, and Team 1 find themselves the game here on Coastline against MIBR, avoiding the overtime and securing those full points.
On both halves, crucially being able to pull themselves away from the clutches of MIBR. And as I said, they've proven that they are the #1 Team 1. The players who formerly represented their organization coming out on bottom for this game. Alamau and Levy really showing up, and Levy was that player who I said didn't necessarily have the best time in their first game.